everyone, it's Kristie here from KP Creatives with another video for Two Scrapbook Friends. Today we're going to be doing some ink blending using a fun technique with washi tape and adding a foiled sentiment from a great collection from Pinkfresh Studio. So I've got the list of supplies that we're going to be working with here, and I'll pop this up again at the end of the video so you can see all of the supplies that we're using and take a screenshot if you would like. So as I mentioned, we're going to be working with Distress Oxides today. I know many of you have Distress Oxides in your collection. I'm going to be working with Speckled Egg, Iced Spruce, and Evergreen Bow. Evergreen Bow is actually one of my top 5 favorite Distress Oxide colors. I love it, and I'm always looking for an opportunity to use it, and I think blending with the Iced Spruce and Speckled Egg are going to give a great result on our card for today. I wanted some pretty neutral colors to make a card for Father's Day. So I've got my blending brushes handy here to blend those together, and I'm also going to be using one of the ink stand tools. This is a great tool to have if you are an ink blender. They come in all different sizes. So this is obviously the one for Distress Oxides or the full-size Distress ink pads. There is one for the mini ink cubes, the Catherine Pooler ink cubes, full-size rectangle ink pads. You can get them for anything at Two Scrapbook Friends. And they really are great if you are a blender because it holds your ink pad in one spot as you ink it up on your blending tool and get to blending. So I highly recommend picking one of those up for to add into your collection. We're going to be using some washi tape. Any kind of washi tape you have in your collection will do. I like the really thin washi tape for this technique. So either this size or the 1/4 inch size washi tape I find works best, but honestly, you can use whatever you have. So if you have, 1/2 inch washi tape, play around with that just to try the technique. But it is really fun. You can even mix it up, use different size washi tapes, but you'll see where we're gonna go with this. Again, it does not matter what the pattern is. So, sometimes we buy packs of washi tape because there's one that we really like, just like albums. If we really like one song, sometimes those washi tape packages are like that. So if there's a thin one that you didn't really care for, it's perfect for this technique. So we'll show you how to use that in a moment. I've got a piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock to do the blending. I've got this cut right now to a standard A2 size, so 4 1/4 inches by 5 1/2 inches. But we will be cutting this down once we are finished. So it's that size right now, but we'll cut it down. And I've got a standard A2 size card base already cut and scored out of the Neenah Classic Crest Solar White in the 110 pound. So we will get to that when we're ready. And I'm going to be using one of these great foiled sentiments from Pinkfresh. I love this set. It is fantastic. Two Scrapbook Friends also has sentiments like this. I believe they're black and then silver from Waffle Flower. So these are really handy to have in your collection to make quick cards. I'm going to be using the one that says, "Thank you for helping me grow." I'm making a card, as I mentioned, for Father's Day, so I thought that would be a great sentiment for that. And if you've seen the previous video, this was one of the sentiments that I had under consideration, but it didn't quite make it onto that card. So I'm going to use it today on our card project. So I'm going to set that off to the side so we don't get it inky as we go through our blending. Okay, so I'm just going to get a piece of paper towel so that I can wipe my blender brushes if I need to. And we're going to get started with this washi tape technique. And I'm just going to close that ink pad for now because we're not quite ready yet. So what you want to do for this washi tape technique is take your washi, and there is no rhyme or reason to this. So you can have fun and, enjoy a little playtime with your supplies. So I am just going to put a random pattern of washi tape onto my card. And again, if you wanted to mix it up with different colors of washi tape, you could absolutely do that. Basically, we're making a little pattern and we're going to ink blend right over top of it. So it's really cool, especially if you are someone who is new to ink blending. to try out a technique like this, because what you'll find, same thing if you ink blend over a stencil, is these patterns become really forgiving of your blend. So if you think, oh, I didn't quite get the nice blend that I was looking for, try a technique like this, because it can really help to ensure that you still get a great end product that you are happy with, and you get to work on your blending. So again, I am just being pretty random with these pieces of washi tape. I do want to make sure that I've got a good spot for my sentiment. So I'm thinking I'll probably put it in this area here where I've got all of these pieces joined together. So I think that'll give a pretty cool effect with the ink, but it will also, I won't have this weird, stark white spot in the middle. So I think that'll be pretty fun. So let's get a couple of other pieces on here. So you could really do any type of pattern you want. My brother is a Van Halen fan, and for his birthday one year, I used different widths of washi tape to make a card that was in the pattern of Eddie Van Halen's guitar. So if I've got any rockers in the audience, you know that Eddie Van Halen has a very distinct guitar that had red, white, and black stripes. And I used this exact technique to make that card. So you can do all kinds of fun things with it. So I just want to get a little more definition in this area. Let's see here. I think we'll just go like that. Actually, I don't want to do that because it's leaving too big of a white space there. So this is a great thing about this technique. You're using washi low-tack tape, so you can just lift it up if you don't like it. Let's just go there. Perfect. And I'm going to do one more strip here. And that looks great. So again, you can see absolutely no method to the madness here other than just checking to make sure the sentiment would fit. And I think it would work either way. We'll worry about that once we're working on our finished card placement. So let's get going with the ink blending. So first you can see I've got my ink stand on my media mat. Don't need to hold it with another hand. I can just ink it up and get right to blending, which I love. So I'm going in with the speckled egg onto the Bristol Smooth cardstock. The other thing I really like about this technique is because I'm using washi tape, my paper isn't moving, right? It's sticking nicely to my surface. So let's talk about ink blending. I really love ink blending. It is a fantastic technique, especially with the different inks you can get nowadays. They're really formulated to be able to work with techniques like this. And it's just awesome how it can really elevate your card making. I set a challenge for myself a couple years ago to not, for when I was making cards, to start with white cardstock and use ink or other mediums on top of it rather than patterned paper. And it is so much fun. Just setting that little challenge for myself really taught me a lot about ink blending. So it's been a lot of fun. So that's speckled egg. I'm going to go in now with iced spruce. Let's get that in there. Switch brushes. So you can see with the oxides, they're pretty nice and juicy, and they're lovely and creamy. So they are a great type of ink to start blending with. If you haven't tried ink blending, some of you have heard me say this before, highly recommend starting with oxides because they really are a great medium to work with. If you're not familiar with them, they are a fusion of dye and pigment ink. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. You get a dye ink, but you get a pigment ink as well. So it stays wet a little longer. So you can use oxide inks for techniques like heat embossing. They react with water, so you can spritz them with water, which we are going to do in this project today. So you'll get to see that in action. But they just blend so nicely. And when you're ink blending, there's a few things to keep in mind. So obviously the ink that you're using, the paper makes a huge difference. So we're using the Bristol Smooth cardstock, which is great for ink blending. I also like to use the Nina cardstock sometimes for blending. I've used that as well, and it works great too. So it really depends on the project that you're working on. So I'm really liking the blend we're getting here from the speckled egg to iced spruce. Just gonna go over that a couple more times. And I'm gonna bring in the brush that I was using for the speckled egg. I'm not gonna put any ink on it. I'm just gonna go over that transition area and soften up that blend. So I really love that. That looks fantastic. So now we're gonna go into our third color, which is Evergreen Bow. And as I mentioned, this is one of my favorites. I'm using the teal brush because it's kind of the closest I have, and I didn't want to use the other ones that I already had out, but I'll clean it off after, so not to worry about that. Okay, so we're gonna go in for our last color. Evergreen Bow is kind of one of those tricky colors that it's green, it's got blues in it, it's gray. Oh, I just love it. Goes so well with other nice colors. Great for any greenery. So if you're stamping leaves, flowers, stems, anything like that, this is a great color to add to your collection if you have not experienced it yet. And you can see how it's blending really nicely into that iced spruce. Just gonna bring it up here a little more. And I think that looks great. I actually am not, normally I would bring back the iced spruce just to punch it up a little bit, but I really don't think that I need to. I think that looks pretty good. So let's get our inks closed up and out of the way. And again, I really recommend the inkstand, especially if you're someone who is doing techniques. Check, for the inkstand with the configuration of the more of the inks that you have in your collection, because you might not have oxides or distress inks, so obviously don't get that one. But get the one that that would work for you. I highly recommend it. It's a great tool to have. I also have the one for mini ink cubes, and I really like that when I'm doing some mass production of die cuts, because I can use all the little squares to hold all my little dies, which works great. Okay, so now is the really fun part of this technique, is you get to lift off the washi. So be careful when you're lifting it off. You don't just want to, go to town and rip. You want to be careful. But it is so cool to peel and reveal. So I have no idea the order that I put these on. So there's going to be a bit of trial and error as I pick up which strip, but I'm hoping you'll be able to see these great crisp lines on this project as we peel and reveal. Look at that. Isn't that cool? Just from using washi tape that I know all of you have in your collection. So like I was saying, if you have different washi tapes that, you're not going to use in another way, this is a great technique to use them. So you can see, I've obviously used a thin one here, like we said in the beginning, but you can use whatever size washi tape you want to. So sky is the limit. You could make it in configuration of letters. So if you wanted to put someone's initials on a card or just their first initial, that would be awesome. So there we go. Totally cool, customized, random pattern. using those 3 inks and some washi tape. And I just think that looks fantastic. So I hope you can see too, you know, if we just had straight ink blended this panel, it would have looked lovely. But this adds a little bit of definition and really kind of, if you're new to ink blending and you might be worried about harsh lines or harsh transitions between colors, this is a great way to cover some of those pieces up because you don't even notice it and it looks like a completely seamless blend. So it's a really great technique if you're new to ink blending as well. So I'm going to set that panel off to the side. I'm going to bring in a baby wipe just to clean up this area on the media mat so that we don't get absolutely everything totally inky. And I'll leave this wipe out actually so that I can do some cleaning of the brushes once we're done. So let's bring back the panel and kind of play around with our placement of the sentiment. So I think when we initially started, I was thinking I would put it in this area, but I think what's going to look better is if we put it here. And I think that is going to be great. So before I trim down the panel and before I put the sentiment on it, I'm going to spritz this panel with some water. So as I mentioned earlier, Distress Oxides or Distress inks, or actually a lot of the inks, the Catherine Pooler ones, Gina K, they react with water. So I have this bottle, this Distress Sprayer from Tim Holtz. It's a great tool to have in your collection. I just have regular water in here. You can add, oh shoot, what are they called? Perfect Pearls. You can add Perfect Pearls to this, shake it up, and then you have like a iridescent misty water, craft water. So it's really fun and it's a great tool to have. So it has a little lock on it, so you can lock it so it doesn't, you know, leak anywhere. But it's great. So if you push fully down quickly, so like that, you're going to get a really fine mist. If you are slower and just kind of, it's going to be bigger droplets. So I want to get kind of a mist because I want this to react a little bit with water so that we get some definition and add a little bit of texture to the card. So I'm going to lift my spray bottle. It's about 1 foot off of my media mat, and I am going to just spray right down to the bottom. Okay, 3, 2, 1, spray. And there was a little fine mist that's landed on the card. And I'm going to do that one more time to get some additional texture. 3, 2, 1, spray. And what you're going to see is as these water droplets dry, they are going to oxidize and it's going to change a little bit how the inks look on the card to add some really great texture. So I am going to speed this up just a little bit by just dabbing it with the paper towel. Just lightly dabbing it and seeing some of that definition. So you can see the oxidizing up here. Really cool. So you could actually wet this a little more. With the Bristol smooth cardstock, I find, 2 sprays is probably good. If you wanted to spray it more, I would recommend ink blending on the Vicki Boutin Foundations paper or the Tim Holtz Heavy Stock paper, which you can get in white mixed media, which is like a off-white cream color, or in craft. So those are all good options if you wanted to use more water on your panel. So I'm bringing in my Tim Holtz trimmer and I'm gonna trim down this card a little bit. So as I mentioned, we've got a standard A2 size panel right now. I wanna make it a little bit smaller. So we're gonna go for 3 3/4 inches across and 5 inches tall. So I'm just gonna take 1/4 inch off here, flip it around, and we're gonna go to 5. And that's gonna give us a nice 1/4 inch margin all around on our A2 card base. So I will warn you, again, if you're not familiar with distress inks, or sorry, Distress Oxides. They do take longer to dry, so that panel is still a little damp. And if I were to really push my fingertips into it, you're gonna see my fingerprints on the card. So just be gentle. If you are nervous about that, hit it with your heat tool. It'll dry those oxides up really nicely and you won't have to worry about that. So let's get the big machinery paper trimmer out of the way. And we're going to bring in our card base. Again, this is a standard A2 size card, 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches tall. And this is the Neenah Classic Crest 110-pound weight cardstock. I am going to bring in some of our foam tape. And we will give this card a little bit of dimension by popping up this card panel. I recently added the Tim Holtz, this is where I need Shelby to help me remember the name of the haberdashery scissors, I think. These are the tiny ones. I got the medium ones as well. They're awesome. They're so nice and sharp, and they are really, really great. Now this card is going through the mail, so I am going to be pretty generous with the foam tape on the back here, just to give this some nice dimension and a little bit of loft on the panel as it goes through the mail. If I was handing it to the person directly, I probably would only use the 3 strips, but you know, a little extra foam tape never hurt anybody. So we'll take the release paper off of this, and then just so we get a little bit of playtime in adding this to our card base, I'm going to bring in my Gina K Connect liquid glue. Those of you who are a fan of this glue tube, you may have the one from Lawn Fawn or My Favorite Things. It's just an excellent adhesive. Absolutely fantastic. Dries clear. You really can't go wrong with it. Okay, so now I am going to bring in my secret weapon ruler, just so that we know we're going to get this straight. So I'm coming in 1/4 inch from the left-hand side and going to make sure we can get that nice and straight on our card front, and then we'll be able to press down with confidence when we know we've got that in the position that we want it. And that looks really good. So since you've been using this paper towel, and again, I don't want to get my fingerprints on this card in case those inks are still a bit tacky or wet, we'll just use the paper towel to push that down. Fantastic. And lastly, we're going to come in with our sentiment. So I'm just going to hold this with my tweezers while I apply some of the glue. You could also use foam tape for this. Since the sentiment has some of those like swoopy lines, I just don't have the patience to worry about the foam tape or cut it tiny enough for those pieces. So I'm not going to do that, but you know, if that brings you joy, then you do it. And that is great. Sometimes I have more patience than other times when I'm working on these things. So right now I think this will be good. And we got dimension from the actual card panel itself. So I am good with that. So that liquid glue, one of the great benefits of it is it really does give you some wiggle time, which is awesome. So I think that looks super. So there we go. Thank you for helping me grow. So pretty neutral card. This one, as I mentioned, will be used for Father's Day. I think it looks really great. No need to add anything else to it. If you wanted to, you could add sequins, Nuvo dots, any gems that you have. I'm going to choose to leave this one as is. and call it done. So I hope you enjoyed this card project. Hopefully showing you this washi tape technique is something new, maybe, or something old that you used to do and haven't done in a long time. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have a moment, please subscribe to the channel. We would love to have you as a subscriber, and that will mean you get notified when we post new videos. So thank you so much for joining, and we will see you next time.